Hi everyone, it's Muhammad Ishan Arifin Hussein here, and I'm here to conduct a session on the IELTS speaking test. So, before we begin our new lecture today, let's talk about the previous lectures that I have been through regarding the IELTS speaking test. So, we have covered so many topics in the past classes. Mostly regarding the grading, the scoring criteria of the speaking test, as well as the rules and regulations of the task 1, task 2, and task 3. And we have uh, we have been talking in depth regarding the IELTS speaking test tips and tricks for different tasks like task 1, task 2, and task 3. So in the previous classes, in the recent classes, I have talked about the IELTS speaking test task 1, short questions, and task 2. Task 2 is 2 minutes uninterrupted speech. And in the last class, we have discussed about the IELTS speaking test task 3, and today we'll be jumping in depth of that, and maybe today is the end of the discussion session regarding the IELTS speaking test task 3. After that, from the next classes, I'll try to conduct direct classes with you guys so that we can communicate live in Zoom, and so that I can hear from you, and so that you can um, start speaking or start practicing using the rules and regulations and the tips and tricks that I have provided you guys in the previous classes. So from the next class, I hope to talk with you uh, using the Zoom directly. So now let's jump into today's lecture. Um, Advocate Khalid, good morning. Good morning. So let me share you the slides. Just a moment. So we have discussed about many types of question in the IELTS speaking test. Um, for example, in the previous classes, let me show you. There are 7 common types of question in IELTS speaking test task 3. So as the task 3 is descriptive and the answers have to be explanatory in the IELTS speaking test task 3, there are 7 most common question types, but there is no guarantee that you will get question from one of these types, but these are the most common. So you are most likely to get uh, the questions from these categories. For example, they're opinion based, evaluation, future, cause and effect, hypothetical, compare and contrast, and the past. So we have mostly talked about the other kind of questions, but today we'll be start talking about the hypothetical question. As in the previous classes we have covered mostly the opinion based question, evaluation based question, future based question, cause and effect question. So we'll be covering the hypothetical question today because talking about an imaginary or an unreal situation is tough. Sometimes it can get tough because you have to imagine the situation and talk about that. So this hypothetical question will put you in a situation in an imaginary situation where you have to think about the answer, and you have to think about that imaginary situation and answer with your imagination. So it can be a bit tough and a bit tricky. That's why it is important to understand how to answer this type of question, the hypothetical questions. So let's see the hypothetical questions. So in a hypothetical question, the second conditional is used to talk about unreal, unlikely, or impossible situation. So here you might get asked a question about unreal situation. For example, here you can see a question. If you were mayor of your city, what would you do to improve it? So the second conditional of this question is putting you into an imaginary situation, that if you were the mayor of your city, what would you do to improve your city? What would you do? So here you are being um, exposed to an imaginary situation. So how to deal with that? How to answer this kind of question? So that is the question. That is the common uh, ask. So the grammar we use to answer this kind of question by if. So you have to start answering this kind of question like this: if I were so here the subject is the um, you is the subject, because they have asked you, if you were the mayor of the city, what would you do to improve it? So you should start like that: if I were, because I is the subject here, if I were to lead a community. So you are here, you are answering by where. So that's the common sentence structure of uh, answering this type of question, that if I were, that's the past participle form. If I were to lead a community, I would begin with, then, or you'd say I would do this, or this. So start with the sentence with if, then subject, most of the cases is you. So if I were, so that's the past participle form. If I were the mayor of the city, then I would. So the second conditional uh, you have to implement would. So if I were, that's the first conditional. If I were the mayor of my city, then I would. So after then, that's the starting of the second conditional. Then I would. So you have to use would. Then um, I would do this, and this to improve my city. So you should start answering the hypothetical question like this. So that's a task. And walaikum assalam Rukul, walaikum assalam Anika. So now I guess you have an idea how to answer, how to start answering the hypothetical questions itself. So let's see another example of the hypothetical question. If you could choose any country to live in, where would you choose? Now, this is also a hypothetical question. They are putting you into an imaginary situation, that if you could choose any country to live in. So now, just imagine that you can choose any country to live in. If you have that option, where would you choose? So that's the question. They're putting you into a hypothetical situation. So you have to answer this kind of question from your imagination. Hello, Kabir. Walaikum salam, Rakibuddin. So, as I was discussing, you have to answer this kind of hypothetical question from your imagination, and you can say that if I could live in any country, I would probably choose this country. uh, it's based on your opinion. So, and then we will follow the generic pattern for answering. The generic pattern is to give an explanation of your answer, why you have said that, why you have chosen that particular country. Give an explanation. After that, give any kind of additional information or example. Give um, any kind of example or additional information at the last part of the answer. So that's the criteria. So give your answer, give an explanation, after that give additional information or any kind of example. So that's the basic structure of answering any question in IELTS task 3. questions because these are the explanatory question. And here we also, when we start answering our question, we also follow that rule that if plus subject plus participle, then subject to would plus verb. So that's how we start answering the questions of IELTS speaking test part 3 if the question is a hypothetical one. So if you could choose any country to live in, where would you choose? You can say that if I could live in any country, I would probably choose my country itself, where I live in Bangladesh, because Bangladeshi people are great, and the weather, the monsoon weather of Bangladesh, it doesn't have any comparison in the world. So I guess even I get another chance to choose the second country to live in, I would choose Saudi Arabia, because it is a holy place from Muslims, and I want to be there for a certain amount, for a particular period of my lifetime, so that I can visit the places, the holy places of Islam. So you can also say like that. It depends on you. How are you answering the question? Uh, Actually, your opinion or your content of the question will not be judged. Your English level, your use of complex and compound sentences will be judged. Um, Hello, Imon. Hello, Archie. So the fact is, here you have to give answer using complex and compound sentences as much as possible. So make your sentences complex or compound. Just try to keep an eye on your grammatical structures and answer like this. Start your answer, give an explanation, give one additional information or example. By this, you can answer this question using 6 or 7 sentences, which will be enough for the explanatory question. So in IELTS speaking test task 3, they want you to explain, elaborate, broaden your question. So try to broaden your question, elaborate your question as much as possible while answering the questions of IELTS speaking test task 3. So as we have discussed regarding the IELTS speaking test task 3 hypothetical question, I guess from now on you will be able to answer the hypothetical question in this way, so that you'll get a better band score from your answer. Now, let me ask you guys, have you understood the criterias for answering the hypothetical questions? Just you can write in the chat box if you can that you have understood the criterias. Just write in the chat box, I have understood, or something like that. Or if you have any question regarding the hypothetical question, how to answer them, you can ask me in the chat box as well. Let's move on to the next question, which is a very significant thing. What do I do if I don't understand the question? It can happen. It can happen that you are not understanding the question itself. So the examiner has asked you the question, somehow you missed the gist of the question. Somehow you missed the meaning of the question. You didn't understand the question clearly. Maybe even you didn't hear the question, because in the exam hall, there will be tension flowing through. So there will be nervousness, there will be confusion, there will be frustration. So out of that frustrations, nervousness, maybe you have missed the question. You maybe you weren't able to concentrate on the question. That's why you missed the gist of the question. So how to deal with that situation if you didn't understand the question, if you didn't hear the question, how to deal with that? So in that sort of situation, you have to be proactive. So sometimes if you don't understand the question, you have to show that you have been proactive. So you can simply ask your examiner to repeat the question. You can say, sorry, can you kindly repeat the question, you can ask like that. If you didn't understand the question in the first time, you can again ask the examiner to repeat the question politely. So that is not a problem. You can do that, but you have to show your humbleness, your politeness, when you are asking the examiner to repeat the question. And if you didn't understand, if you don't understand a particular word or particular part of the question, you can also ask them to elaborate the question more. You can also ask them to explain those words or those or that part of the question to you again. You can ask it, but please don't overdo it. I mean, do not ask your examiner to repeat the question or explain the question again and again for every question. So do not overdo it. Um, do not try to instruct your examiner many times. Just it can happen for one or two times, but do not do it for every question. So that's one of the things that you have to remember. Alaikum assalam, Afifa. Uh, uh, Hi, Umme Honey. So here it is a speaking test, not a listening test, and the examiner wants you to give your best possible answer. So try to give you what you have. Try to give the examiner what you have. Try to in this as speaking test task 3. Try to elaborate the answers as much as possible. Try to tell everything. Of course, your answers have to be related to the question, so your answers have to be even cohesive. The cohesiveness of the answer, you should use different vocabularies. You should be using appropriate tense. All right, but just try to speak as much as possible. So now let's discuss another issue. Do I have to give an answer for every question in part 3? Yes. You have to answer every question in part 3. There is no doubt about that. If you can't answer any question, you will lose your score. So try to answer every question asked to you. Okay. Now, what if I need time to think? So maybe it is normal for you because you're not native speakers. Uh, it is normal for you to take some time. So if you need some time to start answering the question, you can also tell this thing to the examiner. You can also tell the examiner that your question is a difficult one. Let me think for a moment. You can say this to your examiner. Uh, so it is normal to do this. So I guess if you need some time to think about your answer, you can tell this to your examiner, but do not waste 5 minutes for thinking about an answer of the question, and do not overdo it. I mean, do not tell the examiner again and again that you need time to answer the questions. It can happen again. It can happen for one or two times, once or twice. So how can you ask for some time? You can say that that's a very interesting question. Let me think. Or you can say that it's difficult to say. I think. Uh, for me, I take time by saying I guess. Always, when I'm thinking about the structure of the sentence, when I'm thinking how to generate the sentence, I take time for thinking just by saying I guess, like that. By saying I guess, these two words, I'm getting 1 second of time, more time to think about the answer of the question. So you can apply this strategy, and you can even apply these strategies written in the slides. That is very difficult to know exactly, but I think, I believe, or it's difficult to say I think. You can also answer like this. So it depends um, how you're approaching, how you're trying to give your answer. It depends on you. But if you need some time, you can use these sentences written in the slide to mention that you want some more time. uh, let's go to the next slide. So the technique one of answering the question or extending your answer is to paraphrase the question itself. So maybe the examiner has asked you a question and uh, you don't have that much elaborate answer. You have to elaborate answer, you have to broaden your answer. So the first thing to do is to paraphrase the question itself. So for example, here you can see the slide. The examiner has asked, what can people do to try and reduce water pollution? That's the question asked by the examiner. So for broadening your answer, for broadening the length of your answer, you can first paraphrase the question itself. So that's a very nice technique or nice strategy to follow. So what can people do to try and reduce water pollution? First, you can start answering by paraphrasing the question itself. So you can say, so what can individuals do to ensure water is kept clean? So you are paraphrasing the question to start with, then you are saying your opinion, that I think or I guess, most probably you are starting your answer in that way. But first you are paraphrasing the question. What can people do to try and reduce water pollution? You are saying that. So what can individuals do to ensure water is kept clean? I think. So you're starting your answer in that way. Then you can see another example here. How can events like Olympics improve international relations? So this is also an opinion based question. How can events like the Olympics improve international relations? So you're starting like that. How can sport bring people from different countries closer together? I believe that. So you are just paraphrasing the question at first to broaden the length of your answer. So you can do that. That's a nice trick to paraphrase the question. Ask the question again in your own way. So you can start answering the question by asking the question again in your own way, just paraphrasing the question. Do not repeat the examiner. Do not repeat the exact question. Try to paraphrase it if you want to use this technique. And again, this should not be used for every answer. Do not try to paraphrase every question that you are asked. You can broaden the length of some of the questions by this way. So this is not a direct measure or not a suggested measure for answering. The main suggested measure for answering is to answer, give the explanation and give example or additional information. That's the basic structure of the answer. But if you want to broaden your answer more, you can use one of these techniques, one of which is to paraphrase the question. But it is not a good idea to paraphrase every question asked by the examiner. You can apply this technique for once or twice. um, Technique 2 is to explain why. uh, so it is very important, it is very important to use this technique. You have answered your question, but for many of the cases, for many of the students, they don't explain the reason behind their answer, why they're answering like this way. They do not explain that. So it is very important to explain why you are answering, why you are giving that opinion, why you are answering like that way. You have to give explanation for every answer. So for example, here you can see a question, what can people do to reduce water pollution? So now maybe you are first answering your question, answering of the strategies that you think that are useful to reduce water pollution. You are maybe answering like, I believe the best way to keep water clean is to curb water use at home. Or you can say that the best way to reduce water pollution is to reduce industrial waste going into the river. You can also say that. So maybe that's your opinion. Now you have to explain why you are thinking like that. You have to give reasons for your answer. So you can broaden your answer in IELTS Speaking Test Task 3 by explaining or by giving reasons for your answer. So do not forget that. Why you are thinking like this way. You can say that the vast majority of water is used in home for cooking, for cleaning and washing. Therefore, by reducing the amount of water we use at home, the government can conserve the water supply and keep it clean. So you are giving an explanation for your answer here. Or if you have used the industrial term, that I believe the best way to keep water clean is to reduce the industrial waste going into the river. The industrial waste surrounding the river are the causes for the river water to get wasted, and even the river water is now polluted in such a level that fish even cannot live. So if we take the industries away from the river, the situation of the river water can be improved and the water pollution can significantly reduce. So you are giving the basis of your answer. You are giving explanation of your answer like this way. So which is very important. When at first you will be answering or you will be mentioning your real answer for the question, after that you should explain why you have stated that particular reason. So giving explanation is very important. So that's the technique 2, which is a must do, for every question. You have to try to explain your answer for every question. And the third technique is giving examples, which is also a necessary thing. Giving examples is the best way to get a good band score. So do not just stop by giving your answer and explanation. Try to add any additional information or try to give some additional examples with your answer, which is also very important for the IELTS Speaking Test Task 3. So maybe the examiner have asked you, have the modes of transport people use in your country changed much over the last few decades? They are asking about the mode of transportation in your country for the last few decades. So maybe you're answering in an affirmative way that yes, I think that the mode of transportation have changed in our country drastically in last few years. You can say that. Then you should mention any kind of example. It can be from a survey or it can be from your real life, your personal life. It can be anything. You can say that, for example, um, I have been using bus for for my college life and for my school life, but now I try to ride a bicycle. So I myself change the mode of transportation for convenience, because nowadays the traffic jam is much more significant and intense. So in order to get to my destination in time, I ride bicycle. You can say that. You can give example from your personal life. So you can give example from anything, from any historical perspective, from your personal life. So the content of the example doesn't matter. What matters is that you are giving examples in a good way. So try to give examples with every answer if it's possible. So structure your answer like this way. First answer the question, give explanation, and then give example. So remember this criteria for answering the IELTS speaking test. That's 3 questions. Do not forget to answer, give explanation, and give example at the end of the answer. And then make concessions. So uh, making concessions are very important, because sometimes you might think that there are some limitations to your explanation or to your answer or to your opinion. So you should make concessions in your answer to express that your opinions may be limited, or they can be wrong, and there can be other side of the argument. So you can give concessions, so that is not a mandatory one, but to broaden your answer, like the paraphrasing technique, that is also not a mandatory one, but you can use that technique once or twice to broaden your answer. This making concession technique is not a mandatory one. You can use it whenever you like to broaden your answer, to broaden the length of your answer. You can make concessions. So you can also, if they are wanting your opinion in any question, like here for example the question is, to what extent do you think the advertising affects people's shopping habits? So they are asking about your opinion, what do you think? But now after explaining your opinion, you can also talk about other people's opinion, the other side of your opinion. So the opposite of your opinion, you can also discuss about that. So you can make concessions. So that's the way of saying concession in your answer. So you can make concessions by saying the uh, other part of the argument, other part of the opinion, the opposite part of the opinion. You can say that. If you like to say the concession, if you like to mention the concession, you can use the word however. So it is a keyword to discuss any other opinion, any other opposite opinion. You can start that opinion by saying however. For example, the answer of this question is written here like this: personally, I don't think that it affects the way people shop at all. So that's your own opinion, that advertisement doesn't affect people shopping attitude. That's your opinion, you have told that. And then you are giving explanation: when people need something, they make up their own mind rather than thinking about adverts. So you have given your explanation. Now you are trying to make concession by studying the sentence however. So you're trying to judge, or you're trying to mention the other opinion as well, that is making concessions. So you can say that however, it must have some influence if companies pay lots of money for ads. uh, okay, translation, I guess if you don't understand any particular English sentence, you can ask me the meaning of that sentence, money. So however is very important to mention. If you are trying to make concessions, it is very important to mention however, so that we can clearly say that we are explaining others' opinion. So that is one of the things that we can follow to give concessions in our answers. So that's the four techniques we have discussed throughout our class for the IELTS speaking test task 3. And I guess these techniques will help you guys to broaden your answer while you are answering the IELTS speaking test task 3. So that's one of the so these techniques, these are not fixed, or any kind of answer framework is not fixed. So you should think about your own strategy as well. So if you have any of your own strategies, you can also implement that. All right. Now let me try to show you one good example of the IELTS speaking test task 3. So now, as I have discussed about some techniques, now let me show you one live IELTS speaking test, how the contestant or the participant of the examination talk with the examiner. And this is also IELTS speaking test, which turned out to be a band score of 9. So let me show you that. Just a minute. Uh, Just let me know in the comment box if you are able to listen to the video or not. You can let me know about that. Okay, I guess you're not hearing. Okay, again, let me try to do this.
And does this person often buy you
Okay, I
presents?
guess you're not
Well,
hearing.
he's good at remembering my birthday and our anniversary, so he does usually buy me something nice then, but he doesn't just buy a present out of the blue. Thank you. Could I have the booklet, the pencil and the paper back, please? Thank you. Now, you've been telling me about a present you received, and I'd like to ask you some more general questions related to this. So let's talk about attitudes to gifts. Can you tell me something about how people feel when they receive a homemade gift and when they receive a shop-bought gift? Well, I think as with everything, it depends on the person and the gift. When a grandchild makes something for their grandparents, like a bookmark or a clay pot that they've made at school, then obviously their grandparents will treasure it. For adults, I think it's a bit different. If people are going to give homemade gifts, then they need to be of really good quality. Why do you say that? Well, when children make things, it's the thought that counts. But when it's adults making things, it has to look like the present is a proper present, rather than something they've made just because it's cheaper. Of course, the thought still counts, and in many ways, our time now is more important or precious than money. So if somebody has spent a lot of time making a gift, it will mean a lot. But if someone has made some chutneys or pickles or some other type of food, then it has to be edible and taste nice as well. So what about shop-bought gifts? Most gifts these days are shop-bought, and there isn't really anything wrong with that. What is important, I think, with a shop-bought gift is that the person buying the gift should spend some time thinking about what the other person would really appreciate. It's no good a husband going into a perfume shop and buying the first perfume he likes. He needs to see what perfume his wife is wearing. That shows his wife that he's paying her attention. And do you think that children get more pleasure receiving gifts than adults do? Yes and no. Obviously, children love receiving gifts, but children do generally get a lot of gifts. Children these days are spoiled and they get too many gifts. So the more gifts they get, the less they value them. Adults, on the other hand, generally have the resources to buy things for themselves. So if they really want something, they can buy it. Of course, this then makes present buying for adults much more difficult. But of course, there are things that we like that we can't really afford, or we can afford them but can't justify their expense. What sort of things are you thinking of? For women, it might be perfume or a day at the spa or a new pair of party heels. For men, usually something to do with their hobbies or books or CDs. Do you think that more people get more pleasure giving or receiving gifts? This is a tricky one. Why? Well, I think most people get pleasure out of both. Of course, it depends. We may not get a lot of pleasure out of giving gifts to children who we know may not appreciate them. But if we have found the perfect gift for someone we love and we know it's going to make them happy, well, then this will really fill our hearts with joy. Similarly, if someone receives a gift of something that they don't really want, or they can sense that it has been bought out of haste, then this isn't really going to make them feel that good. But if it's something wonderful, then, well, of course, they're going to feel fantastic about it. Let's move on to talk about the commercial aspects of giving. How much do advertisements influence people when they buy gifts? In my opinion, probably not too much. I mean, most adverts are for things like cars and household products, which aren't really gifts. Although a lot of young people like to be given new phones and other gadgets. So if a parent isn't sure which model to get, then they could be influenced by advertising. And do you think that some festivals have become commercialized as a result of the emphasis on buying gifts? Oh, yes, definitely. Yes. In fact, I think it's much worse than that. It's not just the old festivals becoming commercialized, but so-called new ones being created just for the sake of present giving. Can you tell me more about that? Yes. Things like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day. These aren't Indian traditions, but suddenly we find we have to buy a present for our spouse on Valentine's Day. And while it is nice to recognize how important our mothers are, surely it should be something we do every day, not just once a year when we buy her some chocolates. Thank you very much, Saba. That is the end of the speaking test.
Okay, I guess you have seen the video of the IELTS speaking test task 3, that is a band score 9. So that is of the highest precision, the highest it can get in IELTS exam. So can you just write in the comment box how have you liked, or what do you think, why this particular examination was scored as a 9? Why is there any opinion? So I'm looking forward to the comment box for your opinion regarding this particular IELTS speaking video. This is a real IELTS test which resulted in a band score of 9. So I hope that you have noticed some things in the video, that the speaker was so fluent, there was fluency, as well as the sentence structures were very decisive, and the sentence were complex and compound in most of the time. So you have to implement the complex sentences and the compound sentences when you are trying to answer the IELTS speaking test task 3 questions. So as you can see, that the grammar was there, the tense, when she was describing about the past, she was using past tense. When she was describing about any present case scenario, any present day situation, she was using the present tense. So it depends on the scenario that you are describing, but look at her vocabulary as well. The range of vocabulary, she doesn't use that much out of the blue or extraordinary vocabulary. She mostly used the everyday vocabulary, but she had used the different types of vocabulary. So the range of the vocabulary should be vibrant. So you should not use the same word again and again. Try to use different words while you are answering the questions in the IELTS speaking test. Yeah, I get one of the answer from RJ Khaled that for her fluency, only fluency is not the case here, because maybe fluency is common in most of the candidates. They can answer fluently, but the criteria for answering, but the way of answering with complex sentences by using different kinds of words, these are very important to get highest band score. Even she got 9, which is very good. As a native speaker, even it is difficult to get a 9. So getting a 9 in speaking, you have to use different kinds of words, different kinds of vocabularies, as well as your sentence structures have to be complex and compound in most of the time. Yes, you can get a less band score than that, but if you use these strategies, if you try to use more complex sentences, more compound sentences, if you try to implement past tense and present tense all together in your answer, your band score will be higher than the normal band score. So that's one of the strategies that I want you guys to remember. Now let me show you some of the topics that are very common, some of the questions that are very common to the IELTS exam. Okay, let me share your screen. Okay, okay. So now some useful languages. These are some useful languages that you should follow to answer the question of the IELTS speaking test part 3. So asking for help. If you are asking for help from the examiner, as I have discussed earlier, you can say that. Could you say that in other words? I'm not sure what you meant exactly. You can say this kind of things to the examiner so that the examiner can understand you are having difficulties to understand the question of the examiner. So you can ask help from the examiner by saying these sentences. And stalling for the time. So if you want to buy some more time, if you want to take some more time while answering the question, as I have told you earlier, you can say that I don't know much about this issue, but so by saying that sentence, I don't know much about this issue, you're buying 2 or 3 seconds to think about the answer. So these techniques are very necessary when you are giving answers in the IELTS speaking test for anything, for any answer. You can say that I don't know much about this issue, but I think by saying this 1 or 2 sentences, you are buying 2 or 3 seconds of your time. So maybe this is the technique to buy some time from the examiner without cutting marks. And commenting on your own ideas. This is also a technique to broaden your answer. That I know this may sound obvious, but this may sound strange, but I think so. Starting your sentence using these strategies will also broaden your answer and buy you some time. So these languages mentioned here are very, very important and useful. So you can use these languages, you can use these sentences in order to buy time and in order to broaden your answer as well. So rephrasing is that what I meant is, so you can rephrase your sentence. For example, you have told the examiner maybe that, in my opinion, I think younger people are mainly compassionate, are more compassionate towards the poor people. This is your opinion for any question. Maybe you're saying that I think younger people are more compassionate towards the poor people. This is your answer. What I meant is, younger people are trying to help others in different ways rather than the different way comparing to the previous generation. You are seeing that the younger people is trying to help the poor people in different ways comparing to the previous generation. So when you are explaining your own answer, you can rephrase your answer. By rephrasing your answer, you are telling the same thing using 2 or 3 sentences. So you are broadening your answer. So that's one of the techniques you can follow to broaden your answer. I hope that these languages, you will remember these languages and you will use these languages to expand your answer, to broaden your answer. Next, you can introduce others ideas by on the other hand, or to look at another way. I have already told you this. And one thing is very important, to conclude your answer. Sometimes you'll get the chance to conclude your answer in IELTS speaking test part 3. So how to conclude your answer? You have to use anyway, that's why, so that's why I think so, or you can say, to conclude, I think that's the best way to do this. So you should have some concluding statements in your answer if you want to conclude your answer. So concluding your answer can give you better band score. So now practice questions. So these questions are very common, but there is no guarantee that you'll be having them in your exam. But you can say that these are one of the common questions. So is it better to make important life decisions on your own, or is it better to consult other people? So here they are wanting your own opinion on a particular topic, which is making important life decisions on your own will or others will. So that's the question, and you have to answer this question using a different methodologies, but the main framework of the answer should be, in my opinion, I definitely think that. So if you are absolutely sure that important life decisions should be made by the own self, if you are absolutely sure about that, you can say that I definitely think that uh, one should make his own life decisions. You can start with that, I definitely think that. But if you are feeling confused, if you want to express confusion, you can say that I'm not sure, but I guess that making important life decisions should be implemented by own self. You can answer like this way. If you have any confusion about the content of the answer, you can just say that I'm not sure, but I guess. You can state your answer in this way. But if you are confident about the content of the answer, you can start with I definitely think that. Start in that way. So it depends on your opinion whether you are confused about this, whether you are definitely sure that who should take life decision. If you are definitely sure, it doesn't matter, your content doesn't matter. All that matters is making complex sentences, compound sentences, and right grammatical structure while you are answering the question in the IELTS test task 3. The second question can be, do you think good decision making can be taught? Here the answer should start affirmatively or negatively. You should say that yes, I think that good decision making can be taught. You can say like this, or you can start the answer in a negative way. You can say that no, I definitely don't think that good decision making can be taught. It is a self-made thing. You can also say that. So it depends on your opinion. How are you saying that? But as this question has asked you, do you think good decision making can be taught? You have to first start answering it in an affirmative way or in a negative way. You have to start answering the question with yes or no. So understanding these kind of things are very important, where uh, for example, in this question, if you do not start the question with a yes or no answer, then the examiner will think that you haven't understand the question at all. So showing the examiner that you have understood the question well is very important. So for answering this kind of question, please start with affirmative or negative impression. For example, let's discuss about some other question. Is watching TV a good way of forgetting about work or study? So that's you can also start with that. I think, because they are trying to get your opinion, you can say that in my opinion, I think that watching TV is not a good way of forgetting about any kind of workload or studies. You can say that. So you can start with your opinion, that I think, in my opinion. You can start the sentence, or you can start the answer with this kind of sentences. So just try to keep focus on the question itself, that how should you start answering. Should you start answering by yes, no, or should you start answering by I think or in my opinion? So just try to think about the nature of the question before you start answering the question. So these are the very important things that I wanted to discuss today. So I guess I'm done with the IELTS speaking test task 3. So in the previous classes, we have discussed about the IELTS speaking test task 1, we have discussed about the IELTS speaking test task 2, and we have now concluded our discussion regarding the IELTS speaking test task 3. So we have discussed all of these tasks, the task 1, task 2, and task 3. Now, from the next class that I'll get, I'll try to do the direct class with you guys so that I can hear your live feedbacks, and so that I can give some feedbacks in your answers of IELTS speaking test. So maybe I'll consult with the Hassel Free Education for this as well. And please share the contents of the class, share your experience of the class, and you can share this whole IELTS free class thing in your Facebook if you want, so that many people can get benefit from this. There are series of classes happening here, not only speaking. You're getting the reading classes, writing classes, and the listening classes as well. So there are some other instructors to teach those modules. I'm just helping you with the speaking module. So you have to, if you want, you can share this thing with your friends so that they can also get the benefit from these free classes. And in the next class, I hope that I'll be able to conduct the class directly from Zoom with you guys, and you guys can participate in Zoom so that I can listen to your answers as well. So now, for now, if you have any question, please write in the chat box. I'm waiting for you guys to. If you have any question, you can write in the chat box so that I can answer. If you have any question about any module, or if you have any question regarding the speaking module itself, you can ask in the chat box. So asking questions uh, is very important, because if you can ask a question, that means that you are able to think in a right way on that particular topic. So try to ask any question, because by creating a question will help you to think about the do's and don'ts, help you to think about the depth of the concept that is taught in this class. So if you have any question, you can ask one. And from the next class, I hope that we will be able to conduct classes from the Zoom. All right. I guess before going, let's see some of the examples of the questions. For example, this is a question like, do you think good decision making can be taught? So here, how would you answer this? Well, if you go to a bookstore, you'll see lots of self-help books that claim to teach decision making. So you can start with the example. You can start with yes or no. So here they're starting with the example, but you can start with yes or no. It's on your will. So I am showing you to make sure that there is no definite structure of the sentences that should be followed to answer the assessment test. It can be anything. You can even start from examples. So I have taught you that you should start with the answer, then the explanation, then the example. That's one kind of structure. But you can also start with the example at first. It depends, because it is a natural discussion. So the discussion will be natural. It can be anything. Just try to keep it natural. If you don't want to follow any particular sentence structure, that's not a problem. You can just leave following any structure. You can just start answering as you feel like it. You can do anything. So there is no bindings, there is no particular structure. So I hope that you will be able to choose your own structure. So I'm just suggesting the structure of answer plus explanation plus example, because this is the more generic one and this is one of the easiest one to follow. But if you want to implement your own structure for answering anything, that is also good. So I hope that you will be able to find your own structure for answering the question of IELTS speaking test. It can be for IELTS speaking test task 1, task 2, or task 3. Just before ending this lecture, I want to again mention the difference between IELTS speaking test task 1 and task 3 question. The task 1 questions are the short questions, so you have to answer those questions within 2 or 3 sentences, and the task 3 questions are the broad questions where you have to answer the questions using explanation. So maybe 7 or 8 sentences are needed to answer this type of questions of the IELTS speaking test task 3. So if you want to answer the task 3, you have to be explanatory, but if you want to answer the question of task 1, just 2 or 3 sentences are required. And even for answering the task 1, I have told you that you have to give some additional information, some explanation while you are answering the task 1. You cannot just answer the task 1 with yes or no, because that is the short question. You cannot answer just using yes or no. You have to explain a bit, but for the task 3, you have to explain more. So you have to understand the differences between the task 1 and task 3. I hope that from these classes it is clear now the difference between the task 1 and task 3. Task 1, short question, 2 or 3 sentences to answer. Task 3, broad question, 7 or 8 sentences to answer. So and in between I have also talked about the task 2, where you have to make a speech for 2 minutes without any interruption. So remember all of these things regarding the task 1, task 2, and task 3. And in the next class, I hope that we'll able to conduct direct classes where I can listen to your answers and I can give you some proper feedback. So thank you for participating in this class. And the next homework of this class is that answering this question: do you think good decision making can be taught? So make a video of this and post it in the Facebook group. I am not seeing any kind of participation of you in the homework section. So you are not submitting your homeworks for the IELTS course. So try to submit your answer, and I'll be watching your videos. I'll be giving you feedback. So the homework is: do you think good decision making can be taught? So that's the question, and I hope that you'll make a video uh, to answer this question. And remember, this is a question of IELTS speaking test part 3, so you should answer your question in a way that I have taught you. So I hope that I'll be able to see some of the homeworks in the next class. So thank you very much, and I look forward for the next classes as well.